you test something, you try something out and you test it and you get a result and it either works or it doesn't work. In most cases, they are not emotionally attached to the outcome of the science experiment. They are collecting data. And yes, the data takes time to collect, and it is frustrating when you don't get any closer to, the end solution you're trying to achieve. But as much as possible, thinking like a scientist, that's a really big piece of the puzzle.
Welcome to the Mindful and Driven podcast, where we help you to not decide what's really important whilst chasing your dreams. Today's guest is my good friend, Nick Wolny. He was named the 40 Under 40 by the Houston Business Journal and has taken part in over 60 live interviews with places such as NBC, Fox and CBS as a mindful technology expert. He started his career in marketing and since expanded to take over his own company called the Hefty Media Group. This helps people to build their own online businesses, and in particular, he champions LGBT businesses and their owners. Over the years, he has cultivated a mindset of experimentation, and he finds that this helps him through the hard times. I hope you enjoy listening today and that his insights help you. Welcome, Nick Wolny. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited for this project of yours.
Thank you. It's a bit of a change from your usual with CNBC News, but hopefully you enjoy it here too.
This is an upgrade. What are you talking about?
Too kind. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, what's some common advice you disagree with?
Yeah, I think that people think a lot about doing what makes you happy, right? And especially if you are looking at that employee to entrepreneur transition. Do what makes you happy. Do what you love. In my experience, that is actually not great advice. If you're going to go after something in a professional capacity, it's going to be work. You're going to spend probably a considerable amount of time doing unsavory day-to-day tasks or administrative work. And you need to really think about, okay, if I want to monetize my passion or a whole bunch of these other buzz phrases that float around in this online business space, you really need to take a hard look at, okay, am I doing this because I see myself having a higher quality of life down the line? Or am I doing this because I like doing the fun stuff and I don't like doing the not fun stuff? And so I'm just going to give it a whirl and see what happens. I just see a lot of people, we're both on Medium quite a bit. And you see a lot of people who are trying to monetize their passion and they fail. That's the bad news is they fail. And I think one of those big reasons is that, rather than doing what you love or, even doing what you're hyper passionate about, do what you are instead. Like follow what you are really good at. What are you naturally good at? What comes to you naturally that makes other people's heads spin? And then take that energy, take that skill set and go after something where you can have an advantage right from the get-go. And then you'll actually generate enough money to go after your passions and not have to turn them into work, which is kind of the best case scenario. So,
yeah. Well, so as you know, I quit my job last month and it's a similar
Congratulations.
thing that I'm finding now, right? So it's all supposed to be fun and games when you quit your job and you become your own boss. There's so much admin work that I'm having to do and all of these tasks that I'm procrastinating because they're difficult and they're not all fun. So it's like you said, when people say chase your passion, a lot of the time there are a lot of things on the side of that passion that aren't much fun, that you do kind of just have to get through.
I also think a lot of people want to go after freedom, feeling free and having free agency over their future and over their career. And sometimes that gets collapsed together with having no structure at all, right? Like they define free as having absolutely no structure. I'm going to get up when I want with no alarm clock. I'm going to do what I want when I want. If you eat ice cream for breakfast too many times, it's going to start to make you sick, right? Like it's not good for you to just have like complete lack of structure all the time. I'm a high structure person. And my outlook on it is that structure actually creates freedom. Structure actually gets you to where you want to go. And when you are doing your own thing, when you're going after your own thing, whether it be in a side hustle capacity or recently leaving your job, as you've just done, you have to be more proactive with creating structure. There's no one else around changing your diapers for you. You have to generate it. You have to self-start a lot of that. So it's a great pursuit if you are a self-starter or if you are someone who is excited about going after what you want in life. And just because you are a successful professional doesn't mean you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, is generating your own structure for success.
Did you find as well when you started being your own boss that a lot of people don't understand that? They think that you can just do what you want now. So they say, oh, wait, can I come over at this time? And it's like, well, no, I've got to do work still. And people don't quite understand those boundaries.
People still have no idea what I do in terms of what I'm doing during the day, right? And I think that a lot of it has to do with, you're not, how do I say it? Your time and your attention are different when you are an entrepreneur. You don't have to put in 8 hours a day. Some days you might put in more, some days you might put in less, but the tasks that you're doing, the high value tasks, that attention, being able to focus your attention completely on those things that will move the needle next, that is so much more valuable than saying, I'm going to work for 8 hours today. And, and those tasks are, again, sometimes they are very unsavory. It's like ripping the Band-Aid off. It's, we avoid those tasks. We look at other things. Oh, I need to post a quote box on social media today. Oh, I need to, blah, 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 comment on these other people's articles and stuff like that. You don't need to do that. That's not what's moving the needle. And I think people are often in their heads a lot about, okay, what if it turns out this way? What if it turns out that way? Actually taking action on it is much more important. And I think that's a big shift that happens. It happened for me, definitely, is that, I discovered that my work patterns changed. I'm not when I first started, I was not an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. kind of person. And actually now being in business for myself for 7 years, I'm swinging back in that direction, right? Like I want to get to the office by 8, get everything done. I was learning how to focus on the things that will move the needle and then get out of here so that I can go home and make a cocktail and play with the dog and eat dinner, and compartmentalizing it so that you're actually focusing on the things that are going to move the needle rather than making up busy work because you're not sure what to do next.
And I think I'm in that phase myself at the moment where I've lost that structure that I had from my job. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to get all my work done in the morning. But I'm not, because instead I'm like, oh, I can do this whenever I want now. And then I put it off and then I'm doing it into the late hours of the evening, which doesn't make any sense because we've got all the time in the day. But I think I am probably going to go more towards what you've said about almost a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 lifestyle again.
Well, I think it also, something that happens when you go into business for yourself or you're just working on developing into the best version of yourself, is that sometimes you make an investment in a course or a program or a coach to help you learn what you need to do next or to help hold you accountable. My boyfriend thinks it is ridiculous that I pay for a business coach, right? And that a lot of that business coach's responsibility is holding my hand and just ensuring that I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. But when you are going at it alone, which is most people at first, then paying a premium to have that accountability container is actually really, really important. It makes a really big difference. And my story. The first time that I went into business for myself, I had a year's worth of liquid savings and I burned it all down. Burned it all the way down to zero. I literally burned it down to where I could not take the last $100 out of the bank account because you had to have a minimum of $100 in that account, right? If you've ever been at that point, like I was literally at that point. And a lot, it's like a quiet withering away. It's not this very sexy, I invested in crypto and I lost it all. Like it's not dramatic and exciting like that. It's quiet and it's stealth in a way. So it's important to proactively get out there and figure out what your containers are going to be and what your setups are going to be that are going to keep you moving forward, especially when you start to have imposter syndrome show up or you start to have anything like that becomes, that shakes your confidence and gets you stopped and stuck. So
you've had quite a few ups and downs over the years, haven't you? And one thing I'd like to know is, when's the time that you really struggled for your balance, and how did you realign that? How did you get back to a situation where you felt happy again?
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting question because I feel like that process is happening right now for myself, and I think for a lot of other people as well. The pandemic kind of did a number on us with regard to, I think what a lot of it was, and probably for many other people too, was that my usual go-to activities to decompress or to get new ideas, going outside, going to a workout class and exercising, that kind of stuff, all of that stopped and had to be dramatically adjusted. Having alone time was another big one for me. That's how I recharge my batteries. And that was not available for over a year, and so, and just kind of starting to feel drained about that and having to change how I manage my own energy and things like that. So that's one of the reasons that once things began to open back up down here, I ended up leasing an office. I'm like, okay, I want to get out of the house. I want to reset those habits. For me, being someone who primarily sells information and consulting and coaching as my products, programs, and services, it is paramount that my energy be taken care of, that I feel energized, that I feel ready to take action each day, and that I'm bringing the energy for my clients as well, both in terms of if I'm interfacing with them on calls or if we are, doing something for them, if we're representing for them, if we are writing on their behalf, then that's something that needs to be taken care of. And I found that I really hit a skid in that, even though business was, the year during the pandemic, sorry to say this, but the year during the pandemic, it was my best year in business. Probably because a lot of that has to do with having an online business, but I think a lot of that was, even though that was going up and I was getting busier and busier and busier, my go-to ways to decompress or kind of taken off the table. And so that started to really wear me out after a while and burn me out after a while. So especially, this summer when we're recording this, I'm focused much more on what are the things I need to have in place in order to show up at my best each day, and being confident that showing up better for fewer hours a day is going to be more effective than working 12 plus hours a day, and not really moving the needle on the things that matter.
Yeah. You mentioned exercise there, and I know, in a previous life, you used to be a yoga instructor and you taught corporates that as well, right? Is that still part of your routine, and is that still something that's important to you, that aspect? Because I know for myself, I was very much into yoga before the pandemic. Then I kind of lost my way a bit, and I found it hard to do that off my own motivation. Were you able to do that, or did you struggle in the same way?
Yeah, I think it was definitely beneficial in my 20s teaching yoga to learn the idea that movement can change your mental state. And so during the pandemic, I had been out of yoga for a few years, and during the pandemic, I think I got back into a very lazy version of doing yoga, right? Not really breaking a sweat per se, but just deciding okay, I'm stressed out right now. I think that unrolling a mat and laying down for 10 minutes or doing a couple of stretches would probably be really good for me. Another one for me was just so much screen time in terms of hustling and trying to make it happen. And then any interaction with people was almost always over a video call. And so I was logging 10, 11, sometimes 12 hours of screen time a day. And just to be in a space where I was not around any electronics for 15 minutes, that felt like yoga. It could be a couple of lunges and then laying down in a shavasana. And just being away from devices and stuff like that. But it definitely is similar to, I imagine, your background as well. It attuned me to the idea that being in touch with your body and how your body feels informs your thought patterns, how you're thinking, and by moving, by incorporating movement, or changing your biology in some way, then that can actually change what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it. And in this business, what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it is absolutely everything. So yeah, I would say that it's definitely, kind of helped me through the last year, and it also definitely helps me in business as well.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I want to take a quick break to ask you to check in on yourself. There's many people struggling with balance, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. The tips that my guests and I share can hopefully help you along the way. But if you already feel overwhelmed or burnt out, it's probably best that you ask somebody for help too. For some, this might be a friend or family member, but others might feel like they have nobody they can talk to. If you're one of these people, check out the link in the show notes. It's for United for Global Mental Health. They've got helplines all across the world with people willing to listen on the other side. It's important to let somebody know how you're feeling. Now, back to the show. As we come out of the pandemic, is there anything you're now struggling with at the moment that where it's kind of throwing you off balance and you're not sure where you're going? You've obviously had a great year, but what does success look like to you? What's the kind of goal for you of having that balanced lifestyle?
Yeah, I think for years I have operated as a solopreneur, as a consultant. And now it's really time to make that shift into being a business owner, into having a payroll, being a CEO. I think the term CEO is kind of overdone. Someone will start a blog and then they'll call themselves the CEO of that blog on LinkedIn. And it's like, okay, like, you don't have any employees. Are you even, you're not an executive, right? But I do think that there's something there in terms of transitioning into having a business model in which the work is being done without me being there and determining what that looks like. So that's a shift that I'm working on right now. It's new for me. I'm used to commanding top dollar to do the work. And now we're shifting that into, I'm not necessarily the one that's doing the work. I'm the face of the business, but I'm not always the one who's actually doing the work. And so in terms of transitioning into that and getting back into the space of having conversations with lots of people, both in terms of recruiting people and in terms of sales and marketing and all that stuff, I think we're all a little rusty on that. And kind of getting back into this world that is reopening, but, very carefully. We don't know if there are going to be more lockdowns in the future. I'm hesitant to make any really, really big moves because we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. But I think the realization from the pandemic was, okay, I've done this, do it by yourself thing for a while. I'm ready to maneuver out of that. And also what I want to create in my business next and how I want to serve my clients and my readers next. It's going to require other people in the picture in order to do that effectively. So that's what I'm working on right now, post pandemic, and it is thorny. Amar, it's hard at times, right? Like I think that happens a lot too. Is that the thing with working for yourself, the thing with going after your own passion or going after your own side hustle or business is that you are constantly uncomfortable. You are constantly trying new things that you are not seasoned at and you are not an expert at. And imposter syndrome is rearing its ugly head all the time. And so identifying it and being able to say, oh, okay, those aren't my actual thoughts. That's just the devil on my shoulder whispering in my ear. Developing that awareness is really important as well.
Such as launching a podcast. It's one of those things where I've wanted to do it. I wanted to try it out. And as you just mentioned earlier, one of the good things is to just do it, because you can spend so long agonizing over, should I do it? Should I not do it? And you don't know until it starts sometimes. And I've obviously got this thing now of like, how am I going to be able to make this work? I've got great guests such as yourself. Sometimes it's, as you said, there's so much uncertainty, especially this year, about what's going to happen with lockdowns. How do you make longer term plans when we're not sure exactly what the market or what the world is going to look like in 6 months' time? And sometimes the best way to do it is just work based on the information you have. If things change, then you can adapt and you'll be able to do that. And it's having that confidence to know things probably will go wrong, but they won't break you. You're going to find new ways to do things. And I think one of the things you do a lot as well is you do new products and sometimes they fail. And how do you kind of get through that stage of where you've launched something new, you're really excited by it, but it doesn't get the excitement from the audience that you might hope for?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake people make is that they don't think like a scientist. with this stuff, right? And again, that's kind of connected to what we were talking about earlier with, don't do something you're hyper passionate about, because then when you go to try and monetize it and it turns out that other people aren't passionate about it in the way that you are going to get your feelings hurt by that, right? Or you just haven't found your people yet. And so I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make. They think like a scientist. Or not thinking like a scientist enough. It's you test something, you try something out and you test it and you get a result and it either works or it doesn't work. Scientists are not upset when they put the water in the test tubes. I'm obviously not a chemist, but as you can tell from this analogy, but you know what I mean? They're not, in most cases, they are not emotionally attached to the outcome of the science experiment. They are collecting data. And yes, the data takes time to collect, and it is frustrating when you don't get any closer to, the end solution you're trying to achieve. But as much as possible, thinking like a scientist, that's a really big piece of the puzzle. I think another big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people mess up is that they don't validate their ideas. If you have an idea for a side hustle, you have an idea for an online business, you want to try something out, they don't gauge interest in their idea before they begin building it. And that ends up biting you in the butt really bad, because that's where you get into a situation where you build something and no one even wanted it to begin with, or they want it, but you don't have it positioned correctly. And so then you do a launch, you get ready to birth this baby, and you go through all of this laborious effort that is mentally taxing to birth this baby, and it falls completely flat. You hear crickets, right? That is a really demoralizing part of online business. So in terms of just testing stuff, trying out different things, gauging interest. If I send an email and I get 10 people who say, "Can I buy that right now?" then I will find a way to take their money immediately. And then I will build it, and it's almost, here's the other thing, Amar, it's almost better that way, to take the money up front and build as you go, because then that can ensure you are building something that your client actually wants and needs. If you're going to do a course that is 6 weeks long, well, you don't know how they're going to behave in week 3. You don't know what they're going to need. You don't know how quick or how slow they're going to go, and you need that information. And so, when in terms of testing things, that's one of the best ways to do it, is test something out, take people's money first, and then build it out and adjust it on the fly as you go. And then that will actually give you a lot of information about what to do next. And it really doesn't take that long to do that. You can test and try out a potential offer in a couple of weeks' time. And trust me, if someone has given you their money, you will have a fire under your butt to build it and to figure it out. There'll be no more of this, "Oh, I just haven't gotten around to it." Like, you've taken their money, so you have to do it.
One of the pieces of advice I hear quite often is how people say to move in silence, to move in secret, and build something without telling other people what you're doing. And I completely disagree. I think, me, I talk so much. Like, I talk to lots of different people, and I've got an idea, and I'll ask lots of people, like, "What do you think of this?" And I get all of that feedback to be like from my friends, from my family. And what I'm trying to build out there is, what do people understand the idea? If I have to explain it so much, that means I'm not positioning it correctly. And I think it's really important to do that. So you can do it with customers, but you can also just do it with the people around you too. If you're kind of earlier in your journey where you don't yet have customers, talk to people around you, like suggest your ideas and see what their reaction is. Because it's quite obvious when people aren't really interested in what you have to say. And you're telling your best friend about your idea and they're like, "Cool, yeah, okay, yeah." And if you're getting that kind of response, then you can use that as information to try and see, how can I make this more engaging? How can I make this more interesting for other people? And it's not a perfect science. Like I said, you need to update it on the fly as you go along too, because the information you get at the beginning, sometimes people don't necessarily know what they want until they get there.
I think a lot of people they overthink intellectual property, and that kind of stops them in online business and entrepreneurship, right? Or just being ambitious with a side hustle or something like that. There are certain industries where you do need to be thinking a lot about intellectual property. I live in Hollywood now, And in terms of things, I've already learned that when it comes to things like show concepts, like you're going to pitch an idea for a TV show or something like that, people are very secretive about that because they don't want their idea or their concept stolen. I get that. I also get it if it's something like an algorithm, or it is, when you've got, I believe it was a few years ago, Facebook acquired Oculus, the VR company, and there was something slippery going on there where someone took some intellectual property from one firm and took it to another firm, whatever. Those are the situations where you have to like overly worry about that. In this type of online business, I don't think you need to worry about that a whole lot. And here's why. People are purchasing they're purchasing information, insights, recommendations, step by step, but they're also purchasing you. They're purchasing your personality. They're buying into your personality and not someone else's. This is where personal brand comes in. What do you stand for that other people are not willing to stand for? What is your personality? What are your perspectives? I'm going to put drag queens in articles on Medium for the rest of time. And I'm not backing down from it. You know what I mean? So like my flavor is going to be really different than someone else's flavor on that. And we can sell the same thing. I think it's important to kind of normalize that in online business. It's like, oh, I couldn't possibly do a course on how to use Instagram or, for example, something like that because someone else has done it. No, like if you like it and you're good at it and you can help other people with that, then put your personality on that and then go for it. And I think that's something that doesn't get normalized enough. But yeah, when people are being I think if you're at the beginning of your journey, trying to be overly secretive about your ideas and things like that, I just don't think it's going to give you the feedback that you need in order to learn what people actually want and what people are willing to buy. And that information is more important from the get-go.
Now, moving on to the next stage is, what's one mindset shift you think a lot of people could make to make them happier?
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier with making decisions. Right. A lot of people will hem and haw about, oh, what's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I do that? Should I do this side hustle? Should I go after that online business? I think I'm going to be a blogger. I think I want to be an influencer. I think I want to do drop shipping. I think, and it just thinking and thinking and thinking, just make the decision and do it. Right. I think that's, there's a study done many years ago. So in the US, right, you'll have outside a city, you'll have like a dozen different car dealerships that are all selling the same types of cars. And so you've got some people that are trying to knock $100 or $200 off when they're going to go and buy a new car or buy a used car or whatever. And there was a study done that the people who go to the first dealership and they purchase their car at that dealership and just move on with their day, those people are happier in life than the people who trick or treat and are, spending hours and hours and hours of their time and, thinking about all their different options endlessly. So I always think about that. I think about that study a lot when it's just like, instead of catastrophizing every possible outcome, just do it. You can't mess it up and you'll have to learn. I think what happens a lot for us as adults, when we were kids, we did not have this problem. We tried new things all the time and we sucked at a lot of them and it was fine. And then we become adults and we're used to operating at a professional level or developing years of experience in our industry. And that makes us suddenly, becomes part of our identity. Like, oh, this is my career. This is what I do. Oh, what, nice to meet you. What do you do? Right? It's really like at the forefront of our identity. And so you're unwilling to do things that you are bad at. But by design, when you go into working for yourself or you want to pursue a side hustle, then you're going to be bad at it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you're going to be bad at. Have you ever sent invoices before? Have you ever, done client contracting before? Like even outside your skill set, there's a whole bunch of different things that you're going to be bad at or going to be new to. And so rather than talking yourself off the cliff about how hard it's all going to be, just do it. Just take action and just make a decision and then move forward so that you can be thinking different thoughts tomorrow than thinking the same thoughts over and over again with nothing changing.
It might be my personality, but when I have to do all these different things for like the online business, and I was never a writer and I learned how to do writing, and that's kind of led to all these other opportunities. And I know I'm going to be bad at it, but I enjoy the process of going from that beginner stage to getting to a very good stage. And I think for me, it's the difficult part is getting from a very good stage right to the mastery. So I like getting to a good stage with many different skills and then combining them together and being creative. I'm bad at lots of things. Like there are so many things I'm bad at, but that also means there's so many opportunities for me to challenge myself and to try to get improve at something. So that's just one way I can kind of think about things. But try something new. You're going to be bad, but then it's another thing you can get good at. It's an opportunity for you.
Yeah. And as once you get good at something, then the improvement curve slows way, way down. I remember years ago, I used to do triathlons, which is swimming, biking, and running in one race. And the swim is the shortest part. And so they would talk about, okay, for a half Ironman, which is a swim of a little over a mile, is that first part. So if you're going to do that swim, let's say you're going to do that swim you could do it in 35 minutes and you want to lower your split down to 32 minutes or 31 minutes. Well, you need to be swimming about 5 or 10,000 meters a week in order to get good enough to do that. But then from there, if you want to lower the split to, from 32 minutes to maybe 31 minutes or maybe 29 minutes or something like that, then you've got to do more like 15 to 25,000 meters of swimming a week in order, it takes a lot to get that next 1 or 2 or 3%. And especially when you're going after online business, at first you have to wear many different hats. And so you got to ask yourself, like, is going from 97% to 98% in this one area actually going to move the needle and make that big of a difference in the grand scheme of things? Yes, we love doing it. We love getting better at the things that we're already good at. We don't love working on the things that we're not so good at. So it does bring up a really good point in terms of just thinking about, how to stay resilient and how to keep moving forward when the honeymoon is over in terms of learning a skill and getting better at it.
It's been a pleasure to have you, Nick. For the people listening, enjoy that conversation, they want to know more about you and what you do, where can they go to?
Yeah. So my website is just my name. It's nickwolny.com, NICKWOLNY. My focus is an email list. I am big on having an email list. I encourage my clients to develop an email list. I like to think that my email list is decently entertaining and informative. I know you're on it, so I don't know if you can chime in on that, but it's like that's the type of content that I like to do. Yeah. There's loads of dog pics and GIFs and all that kinds of stuff. And then I'm also on Medium. So if you like to write articles, that you like writing, then come hang out with me on Medium. And those two places are, where I focus the majority of my time. And in terms of keeping in touch with what I'm up to, you'll always be in the know in those two places. So.
And the final thing I want to wrap up with you is, what's one small thing that brought you joy recently?
So gyms are open again, and I joined a gym that is all weightlifting, and it is such torture, Amar. It is like I have never been that big into weightlifting. I like to go for a run, like walk out the front door and go for a run and get sweaty and then come back home, or go to a yoga class or something like that. I've never been that big into weights. I've never been into that like meathead culture. But there's a place down the street from me. I can walk there, and it's a gym that focuses specifically on lifting with the barbell, and doing different kinds of lifts, just resistance training in general. And what I've discovered, you're not supposed to take that much rest between these different sets and things like that. I am sweating buckets by the end of this class, just because we're weightlifting the weight, like every 2 minutes, you're going to do 5 bench presses, just stuff like that. I'm profusely sweating far more than anyone else in the class. 2 people on 2 separate occasions, people have asked me, "Are you okay?" in response to how much I'm sweating. And I'm just participating in the class. But I tell you what, I've been going in the mornings, and mid-morning, right around this time, I feel really, really good. My energy is so much better. We just talked about energy earlier in the interview. And I feel accomplished. There's something to be said about those having some sort of morning activity that just makes you feel good. It makes you feel accomplished for the day ahead. Like, it definitely changes the tone for my day. And so, yeah, so I'm digging it right now, even as I embarrass myself 3 days a week after week.
But
so
that's what you need sometimes, isn't it? That little bit of, you look a bit silly, but you're owning it and doing it, turning up every week. So what could be better? Thanks for being on, and I'll chat to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Amar.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps to get the message out further. Wherever you're listening, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and to share on your social media channels. If you want to see more of my work and advice, you can find all of the links in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.